Hi, I'm Rod, owner of Orca Boats. Welcome back to the PT11 build. Today's task is to get the forward deck or seat assembly into the front half of the PT11, which we just cut in half in the last session. So let's get onto it today, and by the end of the session we'll have the deck installed. Before I can install the main forward deck assembly, we just got to make sure that everything's laying flat. So we put a straight edge across the two bulkheads here, and we're just going to see if the mast partner is in line with that. And I can see that it's up a bit high in the back end, so we're going to need to just shave that down a bit. So we're shaving into the levels of ply, but nobody will see that. So we're getting close. That should do it. So with the final dry fit and everything down, we're just going to mask off the edge. So while the deck was in, I drew some lines and marked where I need to drill some holes so I can set some screws and hit the cleats that are in the forward section and the back. That should mainly go through to pull the two pieces together. So if you recall, all these panels were sanded prior to installation and building the boat. Then were sanded again when we put glass tape in. I'm ready to just put the final gloss coat on here. That's all it is, really, is nothing for strength. Just to put the shine back on, so when you look inside the hatch, it should be nice and shiny. I don't think much of this can actually be seen once we put the forward seat on, but I'm just going to use a foam brush now to just tip it off and get a super smooth finish. And that should do it. It'll kind of self-level on its own anyways. So with the gloss coat in the bottom of the hull hardened up, I can now install the deck. So I'm just priming the edges of everything with unthickened epoxy, where thickened epoxy will be added just along the edge under the tape and along the bulkheads, and any edges where epoxy will need to soak up either into bare wood or onto the sanded surface. So I'm just going to give all of the bare surfaces a prime coat of slow cure epoxy. I want lots of time to work on this. So this edge has not seen epoxy yet, so I'm gonna brush a little bit on here, let it soak in, maybe come back and brush a bit more. Then we'll add the thickened epoxy and lay this deck in place. So I'm just running a bead of thickened epoxy with silica along the edge here. We'll add more to the boat. Then I'll just take my brush and smooth it out somewhat so blobs do not drip. And we'll add a bead of thickened epoxy just below the tape line. So with the bead on the boat and the bead on the deck, we should have enough epoxy in there. As the deck goes down, all of this is going to squeeze out hopefully, and if not, you can always inject a bit more. And then we'll run along the top of the cleats. And the mast trunk box here. This should be a pretty tight fit. The one thing I don't want is too much epoxy going into the opening there. That will have to be routed out. So now with the deck in place and all the epoxy squeezing out, we'll just set the screws in that will be drilled, and this will pull the whole deck down nice and tightly. Okay, time to just clean up the squeeze out with my chisel stick right under all the edges. All of these edges will get filleted later, so the goal right now is to just fill gaps. So when right across the top, pushing the epoxy down into the slot to hold it all together. And the last thing to do before epoxy begins to set up is just remove all of the masking tape, and we'll leave that overnight to harden up. And once again, thanks for tuning in. Do consider becoming a subscriber to follow this build and other builds at Orca Boats.